Good morning. This is Mona, and this is my morning view. I think it's past morning. I think it is. But today, during the summer edition 2025, August 21st, I believe, it is Thirsty Thinking Thursday. Thirsty Thinking Thursday is the day that I give you a pseudo kind of lesson, something that I've looked up, not that impromptu that I normally do. So, continuing on with that theme for the Thursday, it took me a little bit to think about what I was going to talk about and maybe look up a few things. Not intense study, not going in and diving into all the books and bringing you all the bells and whistles of doctrine or any of that, right? or diving deep into the Bible to find. Normally I have scriptures. I'm not going to have scriptures today, but you will find throughout, because I forgot to look them up, so I don't have the addresses. But you'll know the stories. You'll know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about what I am today. So I decided I'm going to do a series because it's going to be like a four or five part series on this. And I'm starting out with today is talking about the Pharisees. So you can look up scriptures about the Pharisees and you can find that they are prominent throughout the entire Bible. Okay. So, with the Pharisees, some of the things that they're known for. Okay, so the Pharisees are a social political group. They're not as affluent as the Sadducees. The Sadducees hold a higher seat in the political realm, but socially they were kind of the elite. And so what's going on with their social influences is not only did they have a social influence in the synagogues, not the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, the Sadducees were kind of like in control of that. You know, they had a say, they had a voice, but they weren't the higher ups in the influential realm there in the Sanhedrin. However, they did have a lot to say in the synagogues. So the Sanhedrin was just there in Jerusalem. Synagogues were dispersed throughout the land. Okay, so they had an influential space in the synagogues and among the common people, the regular people, the normal people, the people that were not politically or social elites or in the realms of those. And we're gonna cover these. There's gonna be the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and we're gonna talk about the scribes. We're gonna talk about the zealots. So we're gonna talk about different influential groups of the time. And so today is the Pharisees. That is one of the significant things about the Pharisees. Another one is they had a strict observance to the law. And they were meticulous about the observances. The law of Moses, the dietary laws, the ritual purities, and tithing. So this is part of the reason why I don't like doing this, is because I didn't prepare a speech, so I didn't put it to memory. So I'm just checking off my little outlines, my little outlines of what I have here. So therefore I'm not like right there in your face, looking you eye to eye all the way through this whole thing, which I get to do when I'm doing impromptu, except for when I'm thinking. When I'm thinking, I look off into the sky to find answers, or into my brain, because my eyes go and roll back into my brain, trying to see the dictation that's in there. Side note. All right. So they had an emphasis on the oral tradition. So the differences between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they were quite extensive. And one of these things was the oral tradition. And the oral tradition, they believed and followed the oral traditions passed down through the generations. And they considered these to be authoritative interpretations of the law. So what you had is you had your oral interpretations that explained the law. And you'll find that through history, this was an emphasis. For example, there's a thing called rabbinic teaching. Rabbinic teaching is saying something a certain way so that you memorize it. Christ did this on the cross. He did this on the cross. He quoted a scripture that caused them to go back into their mind and think about that scripture, where it detailed Christ's crucifixion on the cross and what exactly was happening. So when people heard him cry out and begin this rabbinic teaching, their mind was going to go back to that scripture. And I wish I had it right here with me right now. So, I believe it was the father, see, I can't do it justice. If I can't do it justice, I'm not going to do it. Look it up. You will find it. All right. So here we go. An example of rabbinic teaching is, oh, say, can you see? Do you know the rest of that tune? Or at least the beginning of the rest of the tune. There's some people that actually do not know our national anthem. No, it was not taught by the rabbis. It was not a rabbinic teaching. It is an example of how rabbinic teaching worked. So they would start out the phrase, and then you would continue on. I have a way of how I memorize scripture, and it takes an index card, and you fold that card in half, and you write out the entire scripture. You make the capitals capital, the lowercase lowercase, and the commas and all of that where they need to be. Everything needs to be exactly the way you are going to memorize it. So whether it's New King James, whether it's King James, whether it's NIV, whatever one you use, you can use that. But I prefer the King James when memorizing. But because I've been reading a lot of the other ones, a lot of those words get all mixed up in my head. That's why I have a hard time with forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Half the time I say, forgive us our debts as we forgive our trespasses. The words they mean the same. They just get all mixed up in my mouth. So, you pick the style that you are going to memorize and you write it straight out from there. And then the next one is you just do the first letter of each. Capital, capital, lowercase, lowercase. The next one, you write out the beginning. Our Father. ... And the next one, all you do is do the verse, whatever the verse is. So each one is to help you to learn how to memorize scripture. Where their way was that our Father ... The rabbinic teaching, speaking the words in a way that triggers the rest of the memory. It was the oral tradition of passing down scripture and interpretation of scripture. So you have the Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moses, and you have the Talmud. And the Torah was the law, and the Talmud was more like the how-to. How do you do this in practical application? So that is what the That is what the Pharisees believed. They believed the written law and the oral law. They held it equally. All right. They believed in the resurrection of the dead. They believed in the existence of angels and spirits. And they believed in the coming Messiah. So they weren't really like way out there fanatical in the sense that they got it wrong in their belief system. The problem lied in what they were feeling when Jesus came. See, they were all caught up in legalism versus the spirit of the law. So they were really careful to observe all the legal aspects of the law, the outward observances. But what Jesus had a problem with is they neglected the more weighty parts of the law, the things like justice, mercy, and faithfulness. And so the legal interpretations and the observances were not as important to Jesus as it was to the Pharisees. Because Jesus felt justice, mercy, and faithfulness was a weightier part, a meatier part, a part of the law that really brought you closer to God versus all the legalistic things that actually separated you from God. Because it was, you couldn't obey all the commandments. You couldn't obey all the laws, all the regulations. And so what the law was there was to show you that you were going to fall short. And they were more concerned about those things that showed us that we would fall short than for those things that brought us closer. So that's where Jesus and the Pharisees had a fallout. They were more concerned about Jesus associating with sinners, because that fell into that ritual purity thing. It's like, oh, you're rubbing yourself against these sinners, and it's bound to rub off on you. You're going to get dirty. You're going to get, it was all about appearances. You didn't want to be seen with the wrong people. So they had a problem with him sitting with sinners, because there was surely a ritualistic purity law that was being dismissed. The other thing was that Jesus posed a threat to their authority and their authority with the people, not their authority with God. They were threatened by Jesus taking away their authority with the people and their established religious rules and practices. So when you have someone that is more concerned about your appearance than the heart, there is a warning sign. See, the story of the Pharisees was given to us not because they were to be painted out as bad guys in the New Testament. They're not bad guys. There was many Pharisees that followed Christ. There was many Pharisees that sat it down. Oh my goodness. Let's turn off this in case it is not, but just in case some group texts start flying in. To remember to turn the sound off when I'm doing these and to turn it back on when I'm done, because I always forget to turn it back on, and then I miss all my texts and messages and phone calls. All right, so with that, what was I saying? I was talking about the story of the Pharisees. So, when 70 AD came and the temple was torn down, there was a lot of practices that were no longer available because they could only be done in the temple. But now there was no temple. And so it birthed the rabbinic Jewish observances by continuing with the verbal law, the oral law, the oral traditions, the studying of the word and the Talmud, studying of the complete Old Testament in all that it had. And so the Pharisees, their ability to do all the practices were now not in the picture. It wasn't to show them as a bad guy. They were not the bad guys. Human beings in general are kind of like the bad guy in the story, right? But even we're not the bad guy in the story. Or Jesus wouldn't love us so much that he came to set people straight because they were tied down to the law. They were tied down to the legalism of the law. He wasn't here to abolish the law. The law was him being the law fulfilled in the flesh. And he took all that and he nailed it to the cross for us. So the Pharisees are a reminder about legalism, hypocrisy, an outward observance versus genuine faith and compassion. There is a balance to the law and the spirit. And the Pharisees got out of balance. And we do that all the time. We have this theory about things, and it's like, and then we get burned, and the pendulum swings to the other side. And there's this constant swinging instead of coming to balance, because it's balance that brings us closer to Christ. Because the kingdom is right here. Balance. Not this way or that way. We're still doing it in the political and religious realms. We still do it in our mindsets. Oh, debt burned me, so I'm never going to have debt again. Swinging it from one side to the other. And scriptures are used to build on that out of balance. That's when taking scripture out of context is there. Let the Pharisees be an example to you today to be in balance. It's not all about the legalism, hypocrisy. It's about balance. It's about genuine faith and compassion. And that's all I have for you today for Thirsty Thinking Thursday. So go ahead, go to YouTube, Mona E. Harrison. You can watch this on fast speed. You can watch the other days that I have in there. I have about 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months worth of content. I have about 9.5 years of content, maybe even 10 at this point, of content that I haven't uploaded yet. But in the meantime, coming daily, Monday through Friday, minus holidays and vacations. And go ahead and subscribe. Mona E. Harrison, YouTube, subscribe. And that way you can listen to these on fast speed and not have to go through the whole thing. And you can listen to them. You don't have to sit there and watch my beautiful face. So go there, you'll see my hair, you'll see my face, you'll know you're in the right spot. Every now and then I show my dog. She used to be the star of the show. She has chosen to step out for right now. So she is on vacation. and enjoy it. All right. Blessings, everybody. Tomorrow I will see you for Feisty Friday. And no, I don't know what I'm going to talk about because that is impromptu. All right. Blessings. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.